I'd like to thank you for allowing us into your homes for this 33rd edition of Season 2 of Esoteric Science Roundtable. And before I start the show proper, I would like to make a quick announcement. I spoke to Mike Hansen, who is running for County Constable for Precinct 4 coming up very soon. And he actually is going to need some help with some volunteers that would be willing to put up some rather large signs on their private property, especially in high traffic areas, maybe, and this is in particular South Austin and East Austin, the area that he's going to be representing, and to put up some rather large signs in their yards. Also, he's going to need some help with people that are willing to help put the frames and mount the signs. And so he needs help putting the signs together properly, and then also getting some folks that are going to be willing to put the signs up for a while. And again, these are going to be somewhat large. He didn't say specifically how large, but pretty big signs, and that's why he needs somebody with some private property, and hopefully in a high traffic area, in particular. So if anybody's interested, if you'll please call the comment line, or Mike's phone number rather, 656-0521, and I'll show this again towards the end of the show as well. But if you'll please, if you have some free time, or if you have any kind of if you're mechanically inclined or what have you, you have some handyman skills and you can help put these signs together, if you'll please consider calling 656-0521. And thanks everybody for considering that, if you have an opportunity to help with that. Let's see, and so I guess again it is rather obvious that I have a guest, and this is Christy Course.
I tried hiding.
And some may have seen your name as one of the producers in the producer's credits for the show Therefore I Am. But this is actually the first time you've had an opportunity at Austin Access to come in front of the camera and to actually be a guest. And so I'm very, very honored to have you on. And it seems like no problem at all. It seems like a lot of times some of these producers make fine hosts. It's just that you tend to stay back behind the scenes. Like I'll give Jeff Kantoff from The Simple Truth a lot of credit. When he comes before the camera, man, he's ready to roll, and he's got a wealth of information. And it seems like you guys are, you guys could be hosting your own shows. You guys are very skilled, but you choose to work, behind the scenes and help out in that respect. And somebody's got to do that as well. So.
Well, and if I ever got a show, I don't know who would help me out with it.
We'd have to reverse roles.
Exactly.
We'd have to reverse roles. And
We'd be up here 7 nights a week.
But anyway, again, I want to thank you for coming on down. And one thing I do want to mention as well, one last thing too before we really get started, is today is what will be considered the yellow solar human day for the Mayan calendar. And today is actually the very last day of the current Mayan year. It ends today, and this is the finish of what's known as the red planetary skywalker year. So we finished the whole Mayan year, and then tomorrow is what's considered a day out of time. So it's like a free day or a buffer day that joins as a transition day between the two calendars. And so between this year that's finishing up, actually finishes up at midnight, because the new day of the Mayan day starts at midnight. So we've got 3 more hours left of the current Mayan year, and then the day out of time, which is the transition day, and then we'll start into the white spectral wizard year. And I think it's kind of interesting that the day out of time, or the midpoint, or the starting of the new calendar, is in the middle of the year, as opposed to January 1st, where we start at the beginning of the year and then we have the whole year to unfold. This way we've already got some time passed, and it kind of, I think, helps us psychologically to consider having passed through a certain amount of time and having that midpoint before we begin this next white spectral wizard year. And so that's something I wanted to point out to folks as well. And so some people around town are going to be doing some things to commemorate or celebrate this day out of time, so-called. And it is kind of a day for celebration, reflection, and to also consider what you're going to get going as far as projects for the upcoming white spectral wizard year. And so this is a good time of reflection, kind of in the same sense of a New Year's Day, where you make resolutions, you think of what's past, and you consider what's upcoming. So this is, for the Mayans, this is like their New Year's Day, and this is our chance to consider what we have available. And so that's what one thing I want to point out as well.
Yeah, and actually what's cool about it is that since on the Mayan calendar it's 364 days and an extra day, and this is that extra day, which is essentially, if anybody studies astrology at all, just imagine a day when you have no transits. It's just an open day where you can just actually get to know who and what you actually are without a bombardment of energy. So it's a great day to reevaluate your life, see what's working, what's not working, and then commit a day to putting that intention out there, and then
Mhm.
you've got a full year to reap the benefits.
Hopefully, people can put that to good use. Hopefully, I want to mention also quickly, you went to high school with a guest that I've had on occasion a few times, Dr. Yarli Lillimon, the guy that's our resident expert here at Access about the Mayan calendar. He's come on our show a couple of times, and also on Therefore I Am with Jeff as a guest. And you guys went to high school together, and I love how this
Yeah.
culmination comes together. Also, too, my webmaster. I'm gonna have a website coming up in the very, very near future. And if I can be so bold as to call in my webmaster, he is, like Yarli, is of Norwegian descent, and they knew each other a long time ago, and they were able, through our meetings, our metaphysical meetings, to come together and reacquaint one another. And so I thought
Right.
that was pretty cool that all these things come full circle through that.
Yeah, it was really. I'd been in contact with Yarli a little bit, just because he plays in a band, and because he was one of my really good friends from high school, but not a whole lot. And it wasn't until he started really getting into the Mayan calendar
Right.
stuff that our paths really started crossing again. That's when his path started crossing Colin's again.
Right.
It's the whole Mayan calendar thing is actually for, like, my group of friends has been just one synchronicity after another.
Yeah,
so.
and I think anybody that actually adopts that system will see that these synchronicities and all this stuff will come into play in a very real way, and they'll be able to see evidence of how this calendar, the synchronicity and the harmonics of it, can be applied to actual practical living and everyday use in life. But to get on to the topic at hand, I've decided to call today's show the Magic Bullet. And some people consider a magic bullet in the sense of a catch-all, a cure-all, one thing that's going to take care of all the problems, or take care of alleviating suffering, whatever the case may be. If you've got something, a solution you want, a problem you want solved, some people consider how to find a so-called magic bullet. And a magic bullet could be, for some people, like searching for Noah's Ark, or searching for the Holy Grail, or for Solomon's Temple, for instance. Those that'll be searching for these items might be searching for a really long time. Because again, a magic bullet is not really something that truly exists. There may be specific answers to specific problems, but as far as having a one solution, and certainly not one simple solution to fix all things, it's kind of a little bit utopian or fanciful to consider that. But if you break down into the two words of the title, in particular, magic and bullet, if we consider these concepts as energy and force and tools and potential. And so I would say, in a very real sense, that bullets and guns, firearms, are very real. They're a weapon, certainly, but they're more so a tool, and it really largely boils down to perception as to how people perceive a firearm, what its use is, in the very same sense that people perceive of magic as perhaps something that is, people are going to have different perceptions of it. But to begin with, a bit with bullets and guns, we did talk.
Where every good Texan should start.
But we, as far as having a subject matter for the show, and we discussed this the other day, we talked about it more so in the psychological sense as to how it's perceived in the public and with certain groups as to how they look at that, what we're terming a tool, a
Right.
gun. And some of the groups I wanted to kind of consider to start with be perhaps like the Million Mom March, a group of concerned mothers that feel that having firearms in homes is a very real threat to perhaps the lives of their children and the safety of those in that environment. That guns should either be non-existent according to them, or very well locked and tucked away, almost inaccessible. And that in its own, that has some dangers of its own. If we have to safeguard our guns to such a degree that they're not readily accessible, then that really is defeating the purpose of having that potential, that tool available and readily available when it's needed. And so that being the case, that's one group that's going to have that particular perception on it. And what do you think as far as some of the real use of a gun, and also to the people that have the very idealistic notion that we need to get rid of all guns and turn all pistols into plowshares?
Well, I mean, I tend to be really pragmatic on questions of risk, and that's really, in my opinion, what it should boil down to is what potential harm could come, what are the actual death counts, and what is the societal implication of having guns be legal.
Mm-hmm.
And well, first of all, it's an we have the actual right in this country to bear arms. So, you start with that fundamental basic right that I feel that we have in this country. But, I feel like guns are, they're a tool, and they are a tool that got developed on this side, so then this side needed to have them, and it's not that this side wanted to have them. It's not that this side felt like, oh, well, we want to go conquer our enemies, so we have to develop guns. It's all of a sudden, oh, crap, our enemies have guns, so now I guess we need to develop guns in order to protect ourselves.
Right.
And, to me, that's such a fundamental right to be able to protect yourself from anything. I mean, that's basically all you have is your physical vehicle in this incarnation. I mean, yes,
Right.
there's all the spiritual aspects and stuff, but,
Sure.
Once the body's gone,
That doesn't do a lot of good.
yeah,
In
yeah.
this world, anyway.
So,
Fair enough. Fair enough.
so yeah, I think that, there's a lot of people that have allowed public opinion to sway, their whether they believe that guns should be legal or not.
And readily available in the hands of the public, for instance.
Right.
But I think it really does boil down to that psychological condition of maintaining some sort of balance. You know what I mean? If there's a
Absolutely.
perception that there are those out there that might try to do us harm, whether that be governmental or just some common street thug, you want to have that balance and then that make those an equal and level playing field. And that psychology, again, that potential that is within a firearm is part of that reassurance that many people get for having that firearm, ready to go.
Absolutely.
In the event of whatever may come.
And there is a huge psychological aspect to it. I mean, right now I have 3 guns. My first gun I got when I was 18 for my graduation present.
Wow.
And, I remember my dad, every time I would come home from college, and he'd be like, you have your gun with you? And if I didn't, he'd get really upset. He's like, well, there's
Wow.
no sense in having a gun if you don't have it with you, and there's no sense in having it with you if you don't have it loaded. And, so that's the world that I grew up in. And then once I moved to Austin, I realized that, oh, wow, there's a whole world of people who don't like guns. But most of the people that don't like guns are people that grew up without guns.
That's a good point,
You know,
too.
and they didn't know how to use them. Holding a gun it can be a very scary thing because
Well, there's a lot of energy there.
there's a lot of energy. It's heavy. It's just, there's a certain feeling that you have when you hold it. And, growing up, I just always had a certain amount of confidence that I could protect myself. I mean, I'm small, female, but just knowing that if I needed to, I could, basically be able to, take someone out if they messed with me.
Christy could take care of business.
And you know what? I've never had any problems, knock on wood. I've
Right.
known other females that, they just seem to be preyed upon.
Well, I think that's also part of the psychological attitude as well. It's a kind of a dual-edged sword in that respect. If we own the firearms, then we are allowing or entertaining the concept that we may have to use them at some time. And so
Absolutely.
that we could be more receptive to that, something, are we drawing that into our reality some way or another, that we're being perceived as vulnerable or potential victims? Are we bringing that upon ourselves in some way or another? Or are we able to, again, use that buffer, that psychological buffer, to have that gun as a tool and for it to throw out some kind of, whammy, if you will, or whatever. So
Right.
people just know, hey, they just have that sense, don't mess
Right.
with her for whatever reason, you know what I mean? I just have I'm thinking better of trying to fool with her. I'll go down the street and check, whoever's looking like a victim to me,
Right.
whoever seems like a victim. And that's part of the psychology, too, I really feel. But certainly, different people are going to perceive guns according to their education and maybe perhaps according to some kind of a media bias, because the predominant media slant towards firearms and weapons is that they are very bad, very dangerous, and should only be in the hands of those wearing black ski masks and the black boots and all the body armor and all that kind of
Are
stuff.
those the criminals or? Oh wait,
It
police.
gets a little
sorry.
right. It's difficult to know these days a lot of times. True, but there are people that perceive that those are the people that have the only real reason for even having or fooling with a gun at any level. And I think that's a misconception that needs to be educated as well. Politicians, they're going to, depending on who's putting a bug in their ear, who's lobbying them, I think they're going to change their tune from time to time, but I'm pretty amazed at a lot of things that have come through with the Texas legislation just this past time around that are a bit more yielding towards and accepting of public ownership of firearms and being more respective of that right. Again, not a privilege, but a right, and that's something that there's a definite distinction that needs to be considered. Also, too, the Founding Fathers, how did the Founding Fathers feel? Well, they felt that weapons were a God-given birthright as a defense against any sort of tyranny. They didn't think it was a good idea to have guns to be able to shoot turkeys or anything like that. They felt, first and foremost, that it was the only real defense against tyranny from within the government or from without, either way, but primarily within their own government, because they had firsthand experience with how corruption comes from high places and how it filters down into the common man's lives and how these fingers pry into our private lives and how we need some defense, a buffer, a barrier, some kind of a moat from ourselves and some of this insanity that these people try to press upon us. And so again, perception really is going to be key in this. Also, to those that wish to enslave us, how do they feel? Those at the highest levels, they're more in fear of the public having weapons than anyone on the face of the planet.
And also, if you're so willing to give up your weapon, it's as if you're saying to the universe, I'm not worthy of protecting myself. I'm not responsible enough to own this gun. It's that people don't trust themselves. They think they're going to do something stupid, so therefore the rest of the world is going to do something stupid. So I really feel like people are not giving themselves enough credit, and they're putting their faith, their trust, and ultimately they're looking to the government to protect them
or someone outside of themselves
and to make them free, you know, to ensure their freedoms. And you know, one of my favorite Benjamin Franklin quotes, which I'm probably going to mutilate, is something to the effect of those who trade security. Who trade freedom for security and a sense of safety deserve neither.
Right.
You know, and that's really, that is such a fundamental thing, is personal responsibility, and part of personal responsibility is to be able to defend yourself. Even if, you know, the world goes crazy and people are like, oh, you know, if the cops come after you, you're going to lose. If you have one gun or whatever, if they come with the tank, if they come, you know, whatever. They're probably right. If it does get to that point, yeah, it's going to be a little bit difficult to protect ourselves in that regard.
Perhaps so.
But we're going to start to see these things coming on the horizon, so you can prepare yourself. And even at the very least, if you put yourself in a fairly remote location and you need your weapons just to protect your property, you know, to protect your food and your body, you know, from just stragglers here and there. It's just, to me, I can't even fathom the idea behind wanting to take people's ability away to just ensure their life and liberty.
Right. You'd have to really question the motives of people that want to remove that right.
And that is exactly where I was going, is that when people start infringing upon that right, that needs to be the first red flag that goes up, saying, wait a second, what are they trying to do? What's the real agenda here? Because the fact of the matter is that cars...
Just as deadly?
Yep.
Even more so?
Yep.
Swimming pools, all that good stuff.
How many people have you known that have died from guns? How many people have you known that have died in car accidents?
I might actually know somebody that did get shot, actually.
And I know
a lot of people.
Crap load of people that have died in car accidents.
There are other means, but yeah.
And nobody's going to ask for cars to be illegal. You know, it's just we take it as a cost of living on this planet.
And what does that boil down to? Again, perception. What is a deadly device and what is not? What is a tool and what is not? It all boils again down to perception, and that's something that's very key to keep in mind. And so to get over to segue into the second aspect of that, and the psychology of magic, and that whole science and that whole body of knowledge, and how it's found its way throughout antiquity, and it's found its way into modern day thinking, modern day culture and consciousness, just like any other thing has, and it has to be considered also, or it should be considered also, as a potential, as a tool, as a device, as a system that can be used in order to help oneself, to help others. It can be used in defensive means, it can be used in offensive means, it can be used many ways. It's just,
target
again,
practice? Sorry, I was trying to go with the gun analogy.
Maybe a bit much. But anyway, as far as the psychology of that science, many people are going to have a different idea. And what are some of the public perceptions of what magic is?
honest to God, I think that there is a worse public perception of magic than there is of guns.
You might be right.
And I will give you a really interesting example. I just got finished reading a book called The Seventh Sense by Lynn Buchanan, who is the remote viewer folks from the Army when they had their project. And he was talking about how he got transferred from his unit to another unit that actually put him into the psychic unit, and they didn't realize that he had sort of just removed himself from this particular movement or particular unit just because of the way that they had to do the transfers in the Army. But anyway, so he goes in to get his paycheck. They realize that he's a real person and didn't just go AWOL. And then all of a sudden they realized who he was and that he was in the psychic unit. And he said it freaked everybody out. I mean, like, the woman handing him his paycheck was like...
Really?
And the thing is that they didn't really ever tell anybody what this unit did. So... Rumors
and innuendo just went rampant.
Exactly. And, I mean, these were military people that were terrified of the psychics.
Because they're used to thinking in that pragmatic, realistic, materialistic, that same manner you're describing earlier. And so for them to, I guess, bring into their consciousness that the Army, their employer, the Army is employing these so-called psychics and going through a program like this. And also, too, if they didn't know the details, they probably were just, the sky's the limit with what they were doing in there. Who could possibly know? So, yeah, they could certainly let their imaginations run away with them. But, again, it's going to boil down to perception. If they're always taught that this is spooky, freaky stuff, then they don't have any real reference for it as something valid and scientific, then they are going to probably look at it as something just to be shunned, perhaps,
And so I think for the majority of the people, it's just sheer ignorance. They just, it's not in our common day modern culture as much. The other thing is that there are certain segments of the population that are now actively against it. And the irony of growing up in my household is that owning a gun was, like drinking water, I mean, it's just, you didn't question it. But practicing magic or any form of divination or anything that even looked, smelled, or tasted like it was not Christianity, well, that's from the devil. That is something you don't go there. And so growing up, I mean, I had all sorts of freaky experiences with, entities in my bedroom, and because my dad was a born-again Christian. He was bringing in lots of spiritual energy, but he wasn't really careful to distinguish what types he was bringing into the house, but it was all under the guise of Christianity, so
the
that's
door was
okay.
opened, and then everything just came in.
Right, and so then I was the young one. I got preyed upon, and I had no means of defending myself.
No psychic self-defense?
Exactly, and I had horrible nightmares growing up my entire life, and finally, it was when I read David Icke's book, The Biggest Secret, and for like this amount of time, I allowed myself to question the Christ story enough to be able to just sort of put it over here, and not say, oh, I reject all this, but I just sort of put it aside. And then I realized, what my true interest was, what I was really being drawn to doing,
and perhaps groomed for, in a sense, as well.
Maybe. And I fell squarely into metaphysics, into doing the Golden Dawn stuff, and just and I love it. It's totally something that brings together scientific sensibilities. It brings in to a certain extent, you even get some science fiction aspects, and it's a world that I love so much, but yet my upbringing told me this is wrong, this
and why
is
it, do you think, that the establishment, so-called, whether it be an authority figure through parental upbringing, and if they're very church-oriented, Christianity-oriented, what have you, or these establishments, the perception is that way, that magic is either kooky or that it's bad and it's to be shunned and, to be...
I think it's gotten a bad rap. I think that in the past, just as with most endeavors that humankind has gone through, we've gone through a period of being stupid.
It's because it's so empowering to use this system that they want to keep us away from it, keep us ignorant of its real potential?
I think partially it is to protect people, because I think that, there is a spirit world out there, and not everything is what it says it is, and it's really easy to get duped and, all this other stuff.
So one of the natural safeguards is that it's not widely accepted because there are not that many people that are really ready to use this as a valid science in their lives.
And the analogy I like is, and I'm not bashing Christianity at all. My entire family is Christian. I still actually consider my overarching, religion, if I have one, to be Christianity. But really, Christianity is a lot like AOL.
Really? How? In what sense?
Because what they do is they provide, it's for the masses. And you provide so many buffers and so many filters and so many, all of these things that once you get to your computer and once you try to go to internet sites, it's just funky. It's not
So you're not
like
getting that
being
direct
on
connect.
the real internet.
You're not getting a direct connect. You're having to go through all these
Exactly.
intermediaries and all this other stuff in order to get to something you could get yourself, perhaps.
Exactly. But the reason why all that is supposedly in place is for protection. You don't want your children to get pornography. You don't want, this. And so what happens is you put in so many filters, so many things are
And
in
safeguards.
place that then you just get a completely watered down version. So, it's with anything, buyer beware. Don't
Yeah.
just go invoking all these goetic spirits without protection. And and I think that that's really because it is a real thing. And I think we've lost a lot of our traditions as far as how to protect ourselves.
The ritual and ceremony and the people using certain maybe charms, mantras, that kind of thing, that's kind of, again, gotten a bad rap over time.
Right. And ultimately, yeah, I do believe that it was taken away from us because it kept us equal.
I think it kept us in the dark, too. I think it's cyclic as well. But that's why now we see that there is a resurgence, that the old systems are being updated and they're being reworked as living systems, both through the Western systems and the Eastern systems, that you see them existing in the hustle and bustle of everyday life, and that they have evolved to meet the times. But they
Right.
still lie hidden in plain sight for the most part, that people just are not aware that these valid systems and these valid sciences and these schools exist.
I use these analogies way too much because I have to admit how much I watch television when I use them. But it really, to me, it's like in the beginning we had the 3 major networks. And now, then we got cables, went to basic cable. And now, I mean, you get satellite, you can have a bajillion channels. And what it does is you're still getting the same type of information, but then you can go further. You can go to another station and you can learn all about cooking, or you can learn all about these other things. And what I see the various schools and the various paths as being are basically like they're channels. I mean, they are things that a particular person can tune into, and depending on your upbringing, depending upon, probably even your past life history, what are you attuning yourself
Good
to?
point, right.
And then you get to the point where you start to get your own information. It's basically like you are your own
Encyclopedia
satellite.
Britannica.
Yeah, and you're not having to pay for all
Good
this
point.
information.
Good
And I
point.
think that's another reason why religion has been so controlled, is because, I mean, that is one of the best ways to control a population, is through religion. And that's,
Big
through
time.
control, that's a great way to get their money. So, let's not discount just our base, human needs, desires. So now I think today, just about anybody, if you really start to work your way through any given path, you will be able to start to pull down this information.
I believe that's true as well.
The problem is so many people are scared to even start.
I think yes and no, but I think also, to add on that analogy earlier, as far as the fracturing and the breaking up of all this from these earlier main trees, of all the rooting and the branching that goes out, and all the fracturing and all the coming out of all these variations, and they've got more than Baskin-Robbins these days as far as the different variations. And so, I mean, that allows, like you're saying, for different people that may not have been able to be gravitating towards a certain tradition to be able to be more accepting of a certain thing, because it's going to be a little bit more custom tailored to their specific needs and wants. And the psychology of today has accommodated that. man's evolution has accommodated that and has demanded that this fracturing take place so that this dissemination can take place of this great spiritual knowledge that can be disseminated amongst many for the unfolding of our evolution and the uplifting of humanity ultimately. And that's what we see. The true schools are going to be the ones that are working to show you how to help yourself to help others ultimately. And those are going to be the schools that are going to be teaching you how to use the faculties of mind in relation with your heart, with your emotions, in order to merge that aspect of yourself for greater work. And ultimately, the way I would define magic is building in the mind, building with your abstract mind in mental substance, so-called, something, something you want to accomplish, something you want to bring into your life, something you want to achieve, and then setting up a point of tension between that focus in your mind, that picture in your mind, visualizing it, and filling out the details until that thought, through your energy, your expending of energy and force, comes into physical manifestation in some way. And the more direct and the more focused we are, the better the results, the more filled out, and the closer the birth is going to be, the manifestation is going to be to the picture in our mind. So some people cannot stay focused, and so they might start to think of something they want in their lives, and then they just lose it because they can't maintain that focus long enough to bring it in, and they just think, oh, woe is me, why even try? I can't even get anything accomplished. I shouldn't even really try to bring anything in.
Or what I see a lot and what I've experienced a lot is that what I intend does manifest, and it completely manifested in a way that I did not believe it would, or I didn't recognize it immediately when it manifested. And a lot of times what I find is that when people are in a place of desperation, they're in a place of weakness, self-doubt, you can still do that same process. And that's really where I feel like a karmic loop starts, because you'll then manifest things based upon a particular vibration where you were. Then you finally get out of that place, you start to ascend a bit in terms of your spiritual consciousness, and then by the time that item manifests and you meet it right, then you're like, oh my God, this is so not what I need.
Right.
And so then you've got to go through this process of undoing and of cleaning up all. For me, I've spent most of the last 2 years just being a janitor.
Really?
Just undoing stupid crap that I've manifested that is not at all what I really need to be doing. And so for me, a spiritual path is, first and foremost, it's about me trying to know myself and trying to love myself. And I know you say there is no magic bullet, but to me, that really is my magic bullet.
Well, I would say if there's one key, it is love, without any question.
And so really feeling what that is, really getting what that means.
The perception of love is a whole other 3-part series. As far as what do people perceive of as love? So people perceive of that as, being with another person, love for a pet, love for, I don't know, like my record collection or something, something fiendish like that. I could see, people having a misconception or false perception of what love is. And so when you're saying that about love, yes, love is really all-encompassing, and there are so many different levels of love as far as allowing and understanding. It's pretty mind-boggling, really, when you really start to open up your heart and allow yourself to consider and feel those emotions that way.
Right, and especially for yourself, because that's such a key to giving you a true sense of peace, a true sense of acceptance. And then from there, any magical act that you take, anything that you create, is just going to add to the beauty of this universe. And you're not going to be coming from a place of, oh my God, I feel so fat, or why can't I get this date, or what. Most of the times when people are wanting to do like a spell or a ritual, you'll often see them, well, how can I make so-and-so like me? It's like, well,
something, a selfish motive a lot of times.
And it's not, that seems like it's not so selfish, because well, they want somebody to love them, but, in the end, if you really would do the work on yourself, in the end, you would realize you either attract that person to you, or you realize that you don't want that person anyway.
Very good point, very good point. But coming from that calm center, that point of power, that place of power, that calmness that you're describing is very important. Getting your own house in order so that you can perform to the highest potential any exercise of a magical slant or what have you. You do have to get your own house in order. You do have to, again, come from that knowing, that calm center of knowing, so that you can move outward from there. Because if we don't have our game together, then how can you help other people unless you have your own life in order to a certain degree? And so the self-help aspect of any magic system is really the building block essentials, the ABCs first. Man, know thyself. And then once you understand yourself, understand your place in the larger picture, and then that sense of responsibility kicks in, and then you just feel like, I have to do something to alleviate suffering. It just overwhelms you, and then you have to go out and see what tools you have at your disposal to be able to help alleviate that suffering. And the magic systems are one way to really tap into some real potency and power.
And I really feel like right now we have such an opportunity to study and to scientifically look at these magical processes. You know, just the reason why these things are magic is because we don't have, or we haven't developed the instruments to be able to measure them. You know, the way that magic works is it's such a subatomic
and subtle.
Exactly. And so we just haven't really developed the tools to be able to be able to measure these things and to quantify them.
Right, exactly.
And I really believe that as we start to develop that technology, I mean, even for me, like watching Star Trek and seeing that there are possible technologies, at least, you know, in the Yatsiric world, that there are these technologies that can actually measure things that we would consider to be ghosts, or that we would consider to be, you know, it really opens up the universe and says, you know what, just because you don't understand it doesn't mean that it's evil, and just because it's something that you can't perceive right now doesn't mean that there is not a scientific basis for it.
And that also too, to say that it has no use because you can't perceive it, or you can't, I don't know. It's to demonstrate that it has real use, I think, is the key thing too, and that's going to be on an individual basis. You can talk to, you know, perhaps an atheist or somebody all day long that's not going to have any point of reference in their own experience for these things, and so it has to boil down to experiential and experiential sorts of things. I've talked about this a bit in the last few weeks. It really has to boil down to what you perceive in your own mind, in your own heart, in your own life, as to what you feel is real, valid, something you can make use of, or something that maybe you should shun until you have a better understanding of. And so it's an individual thing.
You know, I was talking to somebody about the remote viewing stuff, and this person was very emphatic about the fact that he used to do psychic detective work, and at one point, you know, he had this experience, and it was given to him, it was told to him by God that, you know, this is from the devil, this is a demonic thing that you're doing. And so he stopped, and I told him, I was like, well, but you probably should have stopped. You know, if that is
your
what
intuition is telling you,
if that's what you're getting, then by all means, I'm not going to tell you to, oh, there's nothing wrong with it.
Right,
I mean, there are
trust
risks
yourself.
in everything.
Absolutely.
You know, if you take an aspirin, you know, you could be allergic to it.
And magic is a loaded gun as well. It really is a very potent and powerful tool.
And so if it's something that you don't feel comfortable doing, then don't do it.
There's a reason why you're feeling unease, and just let it lie for the time being, I would say, probably.
But also realize that this may be other people's paths.
Right, and be respecting of that.
The other, what I think is a very important aspect, is the fact that people that watch your show, people that watch Jeff's show, know this, that, I mean, black magic is being used. You know, it is a part of the higher controlling parties. And if we allow ourselves to be so frightened away by it and to say, oh, well, they do it, so it must be all evil. Well, they also drive cars. They also, you know, eat.
Is anything in nature truly 100% black, white, whatever? There's no real totalities in manifestation. Everything is a blend of a mix of things. And so to say that all systems are entirely bad, to say that all members of the Council on Foreign Relations are all evil guys or women or whatever is a bit, you know, I think of a misconception, really. And so we have to, again, look at all these things as tools, and in the hands of the proper people with the proper motivation, these things can be useful and beneficial and not
Right.
deadly and destructive as many people make them out to be. It's, again, it boils down to perception. What is your perception about any of these things as a tool, as something fanciful, or whatever the case may be? And so it just really boils down to how we come across public perception, how we come across public opinion, in order to kind of educate people more so to
Right.
let them consider at the very least some of these concepts and expand on their thinking a bit. Anyway, let's go ahead and grab a few calls if you're
Okay.
ready, and let's see
Sure.
what folks have to say. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hi.
Hi.
I won't take too much of your time, but I think it's a really magical act when the
I knew it.
that voice was
Yay,
a little
he was my
too
first
sketchy,
caller.
Daver. Hey, a lot of times just the first caller. Thanks, brother, for watching once again. I appreciate your patronage. But hey, work on that voice, man. You could have done a little better. Okay, caller, you're on the air.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Good, yourself?
Good.
Doing all right. Y'all kind of stimulated what thinking about magic, and really what I think magic boils down to is your will, your desire.
It is. That's exactly right.
It's where your mind is. Whatever you're thinking about constantly, that is your magic.
That is exactly true. You couldn't have made it more simple.
And
That is
actually,
exactly true.
the people that say, "Oh, magic is bad," and I refuse to practice magic, well,
You
the
can't
difference
help but
between the
practice
person who practices and the person who doesn't practice is that the person that practices just knows that what they're doing. The person that says they don't practice magic, they just have no idea of all the various thought forms and all, where they're directing their will all the time.
Yeah, I'd say we're magical beings at our essence, and whatever your mind is focused on, whether it's fear or love, you're drawing this to you all the time. And people, you enact this all the time, and they got people that teach, success in business and everything, and they use these principles.
Yes,
And
exactly.
anyway, what I was going to say is there's also a form of magic that is collective. And if large groups of people believe a common idea or have a common fear, they can bring it upon them. Like, say, the Bible and Revelation
Yes.
and Armageddon.
Good point.
And you have Jewish people and Islamic people and Christian people who all fear this day of great, turmoil in the world. And in a sense, you look at the world and you kind of think, well, wow, it's looking that way.
Sure is.
And it's the collective magic of all of us, and it's really all based in fear. And that's like the black magic that got a spell was cast upon people, and it was cast on them in the form of a religion. And, it's kind of a heavy concept, but, I'd tell people out there, really what you have to do is take control of yourself, your own mind, and that's where meditation can come in. And you gather your own energies, and then you focus on where you want to go, like she was saying earlier, and you've said. And I've had the same problem, negative ideas, you bring negative things to you. And positive ideas, you can bring positive things to you. But I don't know, I just had to call in and mention it.
That's wonderful.
Thanks
Everything
for
you
calling.
said are some things I really could have very easily said myself and tied in as well. But the whole idea of the public consciousness, public opinion, is something that I'm very cognizant of, and I think the other hosts are as well here at Access, because they realize they're feeding into that public consciousness, the mainstream of people's thinking. Hopefully more the cutting edge and the more aware out there paying attention and viewing to these type of shows, I would hope, in a lot of cases, not always.
It
but-
gets really tricky sometimes too, because I know, like Jeff did his show on, how do you think the world will end, or basically
You mean
about
the antiviral show that was about to...
yeah, he got a little off track, but a lot of that came from just the Planet X thing, and. I have to be really honest. There's, about a year ago, I was starting to get a little bit nervous about Planet X. And then finally one day it dawned on me. It's like, okay, well, what are you really doing? What are you really practicing? Do you believe in your own, do you believe you create your own universe? And it's like, well, yeah, I do. Do you want to be hit by Planet X?
Not really.
Not so much.
And that's why, that's
So
another thing,
it's like,
too.
fine, I'm not going to believe in it.
Yeah, I'd rather stuff like that almost stay out of public opinion, too, because I think that can be, and I don't necessarily feel like I need to be the gatekeeper necessarily on all information or anything of that nature, but certain things we have an obligation to speak of, and certain things it's kind of a bit more negligent to speak of, and certainly things creating fear and what ifs and possible potentials of negative things. I'm not going to paint that picture here because there's no use, there's no need. Paint the picture of something positive in your own life and express the good, the true, and the beautiful.
Yeah.
That's the only way to go. And that guy just summed it up beautifully. You carry the will. As your will dictates and directs, so you follow. And energy follows thought, as the scientists tell us. And as quantum physics and all these things start to be more accepting of what we term magic, it's going to be more commonplace. And also, too, the whole Harry Potter thing, that's made its way into the mainstream, and that's demonstrated to young children that they have that potential, they have that capacity within themselves to solve problems, to be innovative, and to get things done without having to depend on a higher authority, to a parental source or what have you. They can do it on their own. So that's something to consider as well. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Yes, good show tonight.
Thanks.
I'm kind of curious about what you're talking about. I mean, you really can't prepare for like an end time situation because we don't know how it's going to happen or if it will happen, so we can't do anything to stop it. I mean, there's no way to stop it because...
In order to stop what again, though?
The end times?
Yeah, like if
Well, what
if
is
something's
the
gonna
end
happen,
time, though?
Well, I mean, we don't know. We didn't know when the two planes hit the towers. We didn't know.
The
I
end
think some people
time,
did know, though.
the thing
Well,
about
yeah,
the end
that's the
time
problem, you know.
is that we're all
But-
going to die. And the only thing that's different about the end of days is that we're just saying we're all going to die at once.
Right.
You know, or more of us
Perhaps.
are going to die. And really all it boils down to is live your own life. You can't predict your death date.
Exactly.
So just
Yeah,
live your
yeah.
life, and whatever you want your life to be, make that happen.
Project it.
Right.
The problem is I think a lot of people actually would rather be right than to be happy.
Right.
Maybe so.
And the reason why I say that is because, I read all of these various, alternative news sources, and I, pay attention to what the administration's doing, and I get really irked, but in the back of my head, I'm like, man, I knew he was going to do this. I knew when he was going to get elected. And then I just stop, and it's like, whoa, I really wish our administration would just get it. What if George Bush walked up tomorrow and he's a changed man and he's completely, like he understands how evil things have been going on and he's just a, converted man. Well, I think a lot of people would not be very happy about that because that would make
Status
them
quo.
wrong.
Yeah, maybe
If
so.
all of a sudden George Bush became what we would consider to be a good guy, there'd be a lot of people that would be wrong about the fact that they think that he's
Well,
so
I think
evil.
he's pretty much being perceived as a good person in the media. So.
But again, everything you're saying boils down to perception.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't escape that. So he's probably going to get reelected, and we'll have another war with Liberia if he finds out.
Well, it's if people want that or not, I think people are going to collectively rise up more so and more so against these acts of aggression against other
Right.
nations. But to get back to the whole idea of an end time, for more and more people, an end time is a transition merely and not a real finality. Even if people do die and something like that, I look at it really as just a transition from one age to the next. And
like
just
the
an
end of school.
opportunity.
Well, I
Yeah,
guess
exactly.
the
You're going to
Band
move on
Brothers
to
met
another
their end
grade.
time,
So
huh?
it's not really looking. I don't think we should look at it as a negative. I think we should look at it as a chance for opportunity and growth and real creative expression. We have the opportunity to work collectively and creatively with the divine, work with divine law if we so choose. To get locked up in the fear and the limitation. Certainly
Yeah.
many choose to do that, but we can just change our perception. It's really that simple. It's just a matter of realizing we can do it.
So what do you
Thanks
think
for your
is
comments.
magic? I
I'm
mean,
gonna
what
grab
is your...
another call, but thanks. I do appreciate your time and taking the time to call. Go ahead and grab another one real quick. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you guys could go into a little more detail about Maya New Year. 'Cause,
About the Maya New Year?
Yeah, I heard you
Okay,
made reference to it earlier in the show. No, it's just
Well,
I had been thinking about
what,
that
what
all
in
day. It was
particular did you
weird.
want to know?
I don't know, just whatever you had to tell me. I was thinking about it all day. That's why.
Okay.
Then you guys are talking about this.
Oh,
you know,
really?
I
Okay.
mean,
Well, this is the last day of the so-called Red Planetary Skywalker Day, and then tomorrow is the Day Out of Time, which is like a free day, a day for potential, a day for transition until the new calendar year starts, which is the White Spectral Wizard. And these different names have different potential for energy and opportunity, synchronicity, harmony. The Mayan calendar is a natural calendar. It's based on our natural bodies, natural rhythms, the natural syncing together of planetary bodies. All life is tied into natural harmonics, and the Mayan calendar reflects that in a way to count time and to understand time. And so we're able to use this tool to use a time system that's based on natural rhythms so that we can get in tune with those natural rhythms. It's really up to us as to how much we want to make ourselves available to that stream of energy that's available on a day-by-day basis. And then there are other cycles, 13-day cycles, there are 52-day cycles, and it all ties around the 26,000-year time cycle that the Earth goes through the zodiac. It spends about 2,000 years roughly in each sign of the zodiac, and then that 26-year cycle culminates, and that's the ending of the Mayan calendar for us in 2012. And that's going to be, again, what a lot of people consider the end times, and the Mayan calendar is kind of synonymous, but merely a transition, not an end, but a transition from one great age to another.
So it just repeats itself afterwards?
I'm sorry?
So the cycle just repeats itself afterwards, as far as the calendar goes? Because it does have an end date to it, doesn't it?
Has a what again?
An end date to it?
Yes, it does have an end date, but that...
But you're saying it just repeats itself again, the calendar, the cycle?
I think it does. I mean, the Mayan calendar, if you look at it even within, the month, or, what we would consider to be the actual, like, month-to-month wave spells, I mean, it's cyclic.
Mm-hmm,
so
right.
it just
and
keeps...
harmonic.
And so the 2012 end date is really it's really the equivalent of today, which is sort of the end of a cycle, and then we're going to be going into the beginning of the cycle.
Also, too, it ties into the concept that perhaps at that time we will not perceive of time in the same way that we did previously. Time has its day and age and place in our human evolution, but our understanding of what time truly is and the nature of time is evolving. And so we're going to be able to use a system in the future that's going to be a non-linear. In other words, you don't have to go from past to present to future. You'll be able to tap into any point at any time and get through, like in a quantum sense, or like a black hole, wormhole kind of sense, that you can access many points simultaneously, because things are in a cycle as opposed to being just flat and laid out and not stacked upon one another, but again in a circle.
There's actually a really good book called The Holographic Universe by, I think it's Michael Talbot, and he talks about the holographic and fractal nature of the universe, and so he really goes into some of the scientific evidence that shows, how some of these things and the non-locality and non-linearness of time can actually be possible. So that kind of feeds back into the Mayan calendar as
right.
well.
Quantum physics is also becoming, more in agreement with the whole concept of the Mayan calendar, and understanding these cycles more so, and understanding again, that the ideas of dimensions and things like that are also largely due to perception. So, it just depends. Let me go and grab another call. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, what are the aspects of the white spectral wizard year? Is that going to be the whole year?
Yes, it would be. White spectral wizard, let me give you a little rundown. I've got some little keynote terms I can give you if you want.
I wish Yarley hadn't gone out of town.
Well, the white wizard in itself, where are we here?
What wizard?
Okay, thank you. Enchants, timelessness, receptivity, and then also spectral, dissolve, release, liberation. And so really in my mind, I see that a lot of concepts, old concepts, are going to have to be let go, and to make way for some new unfolding, some new and dissolving, releasing of these old, no longer useful ways, for us to come into a fuller understanding, a fuller unfolding of, again, receptivity, timelessness, all these things that we can have access of. But again, I look at it as a definite transition of shedding old, no longer useful ways, and moving into a life more abundant, if you will.
And does that set up the theme? That's the theme for the entire next year?
Right, exactly. Just in the same sense that we're moving out of the
Gotcha.
red planetary moon year. Exactly. So every year has its keynote, but every day has its keynote, and then there are other cycles, 13 days, 52, what have you, within this harmonic system that allow for different energies. And it definitely ties into astrology too, as far as, certain planetary bodies come into relation with one another, and different energy is available or not available, depending. And it all ties into that as well. Exchange of energy, and then the perception of how we can interact and exchange with that particular energy. But thanks for your time and your call. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you in the aspects of everything that you're talking about. It's pretty cool.
Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, considering that Luther Vandross died recently, he'll probably resurrect.
Did he?
No, I think it was Barry White.
Okay, there must
Which
be some...
actually I was really sad about.
Yeah, Luther, people prayed for Luther, and Luther made a recovery. Barry, he had some health difficulties. And
He's from Texas.
Barry White?
Yep.
Sure. Oh, really?
He was born in Galveston.
Sweet.
Yep.
A lot of great musicians. I could do a lot of shows on how many great musicians there
Oh
are
yeah.
from Texas.
Oh yeah.
A lot of groundbreaking, innovative musicians. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Hi, dear. How are you?
Good. Yourself? Is this Pilar?
I think so.
Hello. Is this
You're a
Pilar?
Libra, aren't you, darling?
Sorry?
You're a Libra, aren't you, darling?
No, I'm not. I'm a Gemini, quite frankly.
Yeah. Well, I know this doesn't make sense, but you know that things always happen for a reason. Don't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I don't believe in any kind of coincidence or random chance or luck. I believe that everything has its own synchronicities for a reason.
Is there a gentleman in your life?
Beg pardon?
Is there a gentleman in your life?
Are you talking to me? Or the young lady here?
Who are you speaking to?
Yep.
Are you talking to me or Corey?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks for taking the time to view. Okay, hello, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah. Do you have a guy in your life?
That almost sounded like Ilario.
Hey, I love all you folks out there, okay? Equally.
And the sad thing is, I think they're talking to you.
I have no idea. Okay, right on. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, is this me, Corey?
I'm sorry? Yes, it is you. Go ahead.
Corey?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi. I'm sorry, you went off my screen. My TV is totally blank now. I don't know what's going on.
Really?
I don't see you, but I hope you hear me. And I wanted to speak on fear. What I want to say is that we, as some people, are so afraid we say nothing because we want to be accepted, and then we can't live with that fear of not saying, of not speaking out, and it destroys us. So I think you touched on some interesting topics here. And I'd like for more of us to get involved in this because right now we're going through a struggle, and I'm going through a struggle myself. And I wish I could hear you and say that, but my TV screen is blank. I hope y'all picking me up.
Well,
Y'all have a good night.
Thank
and
you
thank
very
you for
much.
accepting my call. I wanted to say more, but I can't hear you. I can't conversate with you.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry
That's a
about
good
that.
call
I wish
for
you
her
could
not
hear
being
us.
able to
I know. I wonder what's going on. But anyway, yeah, caller, I hope you can hear us. But thank you very much for bringing up those solid points. I very much appreciate that. And I think that there's a lot of fear out there that people are afraid. A lot of people are riding the fence, too. They're right in the middle, and they're aware of things, but something hasn't motivated them enough to where they're ready to jump in and take advantage.
A lot of people are so willing to take on the government, to take on all of these external things, but when it comes right down to it, you got to look at your own life. You got to look at your own house. You got to look at your own family and see, how many times a day do I sacrifice myself? Do I sacrifice my principles because I don't want to look bad or because I don't want somebody to dislike me?
Yeah, try to keep popularity contests.
That's the real control mechanism right there.
Big time. Okay, well, I'd like to wrap up here. Again, Mike Hansen's going to need volunteers to help him put signs together and put signs up in your yard. If you've got a large yard, it's south or east, it's high traffic area, please call that number and talk to Mike, and if you can help him out, that'd be great. I'd like to remind folks to please check out Jeff Contreras and Therefore I Am. They're live every Tuesday at 10 on Channel 10. I'd like to remind folks that we are here live every Thursday from 9 to 10 on Channel 10. And we'll actually have a live show on the 5th week, on the 31st. We'll be here next week, so folks will tune in. I'd appreciate that. I'd like to thank my producer, Chris, for commanding the helm of the Starship Esoterica. And I'd really like to thank again my guest, Christy. Thank you so much for coming down.
It was really fun. Thanks, Corey.
And yeah, very informative. And again, thanks for coming on Austin Access. You really ought to do more publicly like this.
We'll see.
Okay, very cool.
Thanks, Corey.
Okay, well, again, thanks, Austin. Really appreciate you taking the time to view. Have a nice evening. See you. Take care, Austin. Did a damn good job. I was impressed.